yeah, for context, like, basically what Matt and I do is we come in as backing musicians and musical directors for usually independent artists. You do drums, playback, and I usually play whatever other instruments. Usually, well, between bass, keys, and guitar, I'll do a mix of those.
Yeah.
And yeah, in terms of like the role from a musical standpoint and like as a musician, for any of the artists we work with, the first thing I do is it's like we get the songs and I'll just listen to them and absorb it. And first and foremost, as I think from an MD side of things, it's listening to what's the song about, what's trying to capture, like what's it trying to capture, what's the energy of it, and starting to envision like, okay, what's this going to sound like live? What is it going to feel like live? Could you starting with kind of the bigger picture things in terms of like live instruments or more backing track heavy, and kind of like what's the balance of those? Like how heavily do you need to lean into one or the other?
Yeah.
And then from there, I'll start to listen to specific instrumentation.
Yeah.
And I think the key thing, let's say especially with our pop acts like Elio and Mimika and Jayde, Nico, is like, I'll go through from my side at least and be like, okay, what's the audience going to expect to hear? Is there anything here that really stands out that is like, if that's not played on stage, it's a little weird. You know what I mean? Like if there's like a guitar part, then it's like, okay. And it's like pretty prominent, like a lick or whatever it might be. Or if the song has like a live bass that it's like pretty prominent, like by Elio, like Elio IRL.
Yeah.
Or
Hurts to Hate.
Hurts to Hate, or like Jayde has that track, Was It Worth It?
Yeah.
I think that's when I play bass on. Or a keys part or whatever, synth part, synth line. And I'll just like kind of pick out like what's going to be expected to be heard.
Memorable parts that audiences would sometimes even feel like they need to sing along to.
Yeah.
Or like a solo. Like if there's a solo in a song, most of the time we're going to be like, okay, Nate's going to take the solo. We're going to try to recreate the patch as close as possible. And we're going to go from there. And even deciding some of the instruments that are important to the song first sort of eliminates choices throughout the song as well. Because if there's a solo, a guitar solo, let's say, well, it'll inform us that you're probably going to be playing guitar in other parts of the song.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
In your case, as a guitarist, maybe you can speak more to this. You have some freedoms there to play some keys. And that's what you sometimes you do that. You're playing keys in, let's say, the verses, for instance, and then going to the guitar for the chorus. I think about Charger, for instance, a song. Again, shout out Elio. Huge track.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. It's like, I think this would be for any musicians coming up, being like, okay, I want to support or I want to play for other artists or kind of get into the live arranging side of things. It's like, start with the obvious.
Yeah.
And it's like, keep it simple in terms of starting with the obvious. And then from there, I'll go through and be like, okay, now what? Like, do I need to, is there a second kind of level of, important instruments that I can tap into, that's like a pad or something that's like, like what parts of the song need to be filled in from there? Because it's like if the guitar is already in the track the whole time, then I'll just learn that part.
Yeah.
But if it's like, oh, there's only a solo at the end or something, then it's like, okay, what's going on in the rest of the song? Different parts. And then it's kind of up to, okay, is there something I can pick out to play and recreate, or do I have to make up something?
Yes.
And that often is sometimes the case where, and I think that I think we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but the creative freedom, but also the responsibility to do the song justice still, if you're adding something new to it live. Because I think that's really important too about what we do is in terms of, we're talking about the anatomy of a live show. It's like you also want the show to be unique.
See what's important in the song. Pick out what you can play, and otherwise see how you can support the song. I think the simplicity is a very big word that we often use. How can we make it more simple but more effective? And I think just the clarity of the message and the communication between the audience is there. When it's effective, simple, and they can remember the part as well. I think a term that I also want to bring up is just like what the goal of the artist is.
Yeah.
I think we're going to talk about it just in a sec, but it depends if they want to recreate the song note per note, or if they want to give a different experience. I often think about, some of the artists that we work with is that like a lot of the drums maybe on the record are electronic, 808s, just different samples and stuff. But how do I come in there and recreate that drum part, or how do I add live drums to it? So it becomes a question of efficiency, clarity, simplicity, and ease of understanding as well. Because we often talk, like in the drum world, we often talk about like chops versus groove, or like chops versus fundamental. And you don't want to chop it up, every song, so that the audience can't really understand what you're doing. Because at the end of the day, and I think we didn't talk about this in our pre-interview, but it really is about serving the artist.
100%, yeah.
Because where we're coming from as session musicians, it really is about the artist at the end of the day.
Yeah. And like, I know there's still more we can talk about in this section, but I know we wanted to get to this idea of like serving. Yeah, it's like you're serving the artist's vision ultimately. Yeah. And I know that brings up for some people, they feel like, well, then you're giving up some of your creative freedom and you're just kind of showing up and playing a part. And that's not always necessarily true. Yeah. It's like, when you get in with an artist, it's like you have to serve their vision. It's like, what's their vision? What are they trying to execute?
Yes.
And if they don't know, because that's sometimes the case too, it's like helping them get there and be like, that's where you can kind of step in with maybe some ideas or maybe some questions or whatever. Or sometimes they're just like, they want the influence of kind of the musicians that are playing with them to kind of influence the live sound. It's like, that's super great. And I'm always grateful when they want that. I'm
smiling right now because we brought up in our pre-interview that there are some artists live that are so affected in a good way by their session players that they have on stage with them. Now, some of the example that come to mind right away is, an Isaiah Sharkey, Steve Jordan, Pino Palladino with our great friend John Mayer. I say our great friend John Mayer, but he's like one of our biggest idols from a musician's point of view.